Welcome in, everybody, to a little bit of a special edition of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. And again, we're going to be doing something a little bit different here on today's show. So listen, we know football's coming. Love football, talk a lot of football. But at the same time, we always have our finger on the pulse of all things hoops. And certainly there is a program in college basketball that has taken the sport by storm this spring. That's a lot of S's, by the way. That is the BYU Cougars. Okay, so BYU, listen, they hire Kevin Young from the NBA. Us college hoops fans don't know a lot about him. And he, again, has just taken the sport by storm. BYU finishes its 2024 recruiting class with two of the highest ranked players in program history. They returned several key players off last year's tournament team. And oh, by the way, we see what they are doing in the class of 2025. Well, I bring it up because you know who's joining me here on today's episode of the Aaron Torres Pod? None other than BYU head coach Kevin Young. That is right. I am so fired up to talk about him. By the way, we're kind of wearing matching shirts. I swear that wasn't planned. But Kevin Young joins me, and we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about his transition from the pros to college, the biggest surprises, the biggest excitements. How has he been able to recruit at the level that he has? Is NIL as big of a deal as people think? And also, again, he's coming from the NBA. He's got some fun stories on Kevin Durant and Chris Paul as well. So everybody sit back, relax, enjoy BYU head coach Kevin Young. By the way, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, if you are a BYU fan, we have our Torres-specific BYU page, Torres on BYU. Quick break. Be right back. We will welcome in BYU head coach. All right, joining me via Zoom. Gentlemen, listen, I've been watching from a distance here for about 4 or 5 months now. Man, that's taken the college hoops world by storm, and a program that has certainly, caught a lot of people's attention and had a heck of an offseason going into the 24-25 season. BYU basketball head coach Kevin Young. Coach Young, how you doing this morning, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. And, I want to start with this is that, listen, I know you've been asked this question a million times, and I think every BYU fan that's listening knows a lot about your background and your rise to the BYU program. But for people that don't know, for people that are kind of getting to know you, your story, you are a guy that did have some college experience a while ago, but really we're on a trajectory where, I saw Adrian Wojnarowski on TV talking about how you were the hottest coaching candidate in all of the NBA. You choose to come to BYU. What was it about BYU and this opportunity that really intrigued you, having that largely NBA, G League, et cetera, background?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of factors into it. I mean, at the end of the day, from a basketball standpoint, when I learned more about the specifics of the program, I felt like it was a place that was really set up to succeed. A lot of jobs aren't set up to succeed. Just knowing, I've lived here 13 years ago, so I was familiar. Lots changed in that time, but I was familiar with the support of the program. This is a booming economy, huge tech scene out here, major entrepreneurial spirit, not just in Provo, but in Utah as a whole. And so there's a lot going on. It's a super fast growing state, young state. I have family here. My brother works out here in that tech scene. So it wasn't, I knew a lot about it, right? And that made it intriguing because I felt like, it was just ready to explode, quite frankly. And so you factor that in, combined with the stability piece that's hard to come by in the NBA. I'm a dad of 3 young kids. My wife's been grinding with me in the NBA and the G League world. So from a family perspective, we like the stability, and it's a beautiful place to live and to raise a family. And so there was a lot of factors that went into it. And, a lot of times in life, man, timing really plays a major role in it. And the way this story sort of unfolded, it just felt like for me and her that it was the place we should come.
Fantastic. Now that you have been both in Provo, but also the college space, and I know there's a lot of talk about, college is changing, but I've even heard you say in other interviews, like, I have nothing to compare it to, so it's whatever to me. But how has college hoops been? What have you learned about 4 or 5 months on the job here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I was just telling someone earlier on an earlier call, a friend of mine back in Phoenix, that was asking me a similar question. It's actually been really fun just learning new stuff.
Sure.
I was in the pro world for a very long time, and you kind of get into, I want to say monotony, but you get into a little bit of a rhythm. And so this has challenged me a lot, in terms of learning new things, learning the recruiting process, visits, Zoom calls, recruiting trail, travel, like everything, right? I'm just learning new stuff every day. I feel like, I've got a tremendous staff in place that's holding my hand through a lot of this stuff. Um, so I just think it's been a major learning process for me in these early days. And we've screwed some things up. Hopefully we got a couple things right as well, but it's been really invigorating.
Well, it doesn't feel like you're screwing up too much. You've brought back a lot of players from last year's NCAA tournament team. You guys have also had a great deal of success in recruiting both the portal, high school. First of all, let me ask you a question. There's this cliche of like, especially for people that have a pro background, that the portal is kind of free agency, high school is kind of drafting. Do you view it that way, or are players regardless? I'm just kind of curious from that perspective.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I mean, in a lot of ways, the portal is a safety net in terms of if you miss on guys, or maybe, the fit's not there with guys who you might be able to get on the high school scene. Again, even that, like I'm still learning that, and we talk about it every day in terms of our philosophy and crystallizing exactly how we want to attack it. Um, but I think that's fair in terms of comparing the draft and free agency and so forth.
Is how Tell us a little bit about the setup that you guys have. You have an NBA background. You're now in college, obviously, but my even just looking at your website, director of analytics, director of nutrition, it feels as though that you have, you're kind of bringing that pro mindset, that pro whatever you want to call it, pyramid or whatever of how to run an organization. Tell us a little bit about it. You don't have to give away too many trade secrets here, but and then also how that's resonating with young people when you're on the road recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, when I took this job, I made the comment that I wanted to make this the best place in college basketball to prepare young men for the NBA, right? And so in my thought process, the byproduct of that is going to be winning a lot of college basketball games. Like if we can get the right guys in here that are serious about their craft, want to get to the next level, are good enough to get to the next level, we feel like that's going to help us win ball games here, right? And so a big part of that is how we set up our organization or our program. And I've taken a lifetime worth of knowledge that I learned in the NBA. Let me back up because I
Sure.
was I was I was having these same conversations with NBA GMs, like, hey, this is how I'm going to come run your organization, right? And so this is stuff I've been thinking about, on a very serious level for I'd say the last 3 or 4 summers. So this has been a process and a blueprint that's been crystallized over the last 3 or 4 years in like a real type, hey, I might get this job level, not just something hypothetical, right? And so I put a lot of time and thought into what that may look like. And so when I took this job, you know, that's what I know, and so that's what I wanted to bring here. And to your point, it has resonated, I think, with recruits, with recruits advisors. They see what we're doing here. It is an MBA program, for the lack of a better term, in terms of how it's organized. I was lucky as a young assistant in the NBA. I worked for some really, really good head coaches, that not just head coaches, but organizations that empowered me to have a huge role in what we were doing, right? And I've kind of done that on all levels with my 5 assistant coaches, with our player development program. You mentioned the analytics. We've got, four of our actually 5 of our people in what I'm calling our player development team are all people that have NBA experience, whether that's strength and conditioning coach, whether that's director of mental strength, whether that's nutritionist, whether that's analytics, whether that's director of player development. And so like we can kind of talk the same language, right? And it's actually made it really seamless. And I think as recruits are seeing that, right, they want to jump into that level of development with that level of specificity and robustness and so forth. And so that's been something that I think a lot of parents have really enjoyed, and I think the players see it as a way like, hey man, these guys can really help me get better.
Yeah, you guys have had a great level of recruiting success. The guys that you have committed. I mean, I saw this week Yegor Demin, kid from overseas, is the highest rated, I believe, recruit to basically sign with BYU in this online recruiting era. Every kid's a little different. We get that, but do you think that the structure, the ability to kind of see that pathway of, hey, I can come here, whether it's for a year, 2 years, whatever it may be, I can come here and these guys know that pathway to get me to. And listen, we all love college basketball. I love college basketball, but I understand if you're a young man, you want the opportunity to play at the highest level. I mean, is that something that you think has allowed you guys to kind of make waves with some of these kids? Is that you do have kind of that linear pathway and you know what that pathway looks like?
Yeah, I think that that last point specifically, like again, it's not hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky in the pro side because I worked with a lot of really, really good players, Hall of Fame level guys. And then, I've also worked with guys who were on two-way contracts that we helped develop to get, big time contracts in the NBA, right? So the story is wide ranging and the proof of concept is wide ranging. And I think that the genuine nature of that, I think people see it. Again, it's not hypothetical. And I think that resonates not just with players, but with players, inner circles, whether that's their families, their advisors, and so forth. It's there's some tangible nature to what we're talking about.
One thing I've been told, and every time that you guys have any degree of success, I get asked this question a lot, is about the BYU honor code. And I've said this in interviews in Provo and everything, is it's never intended to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form to anyone's religion or thought process or whatever. But, I can only say from my own experience, I think, honoring the BYU honor code might have been tough for me as an 18-year-old if I was good enough to play, and I certainly wasn't. But I've been told that you guys use the honor code actually as a recruiting advantage, more so than seeing it as any sort of negative.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it's done is it's streamlined our pool of prospects that we look at. Not every guy is going to be a fit, and that's okay. I think it's that way in the NBA, right? Like I've been in a million draft meetings where intel comes in, guy gets, and by the way, really good player. Intel comes in, move on to the next guy. That blew my mind as a young guy in the NBA. I'm like, it's like unbelievable when they just next guy, right? And so, I don't think it's dissimilar to like how pro organizations operate. Obviously, it's a part of our university that's important, not only to the school but to me as well. And so, where it's helped us, I think, is it allows guys to know like what kind of locker room they're walking into. They feel like they can trust what guys are doing, in terms of how serious that they are about their craft. And, it takes away a lot of the distractions and so forth. And so honestly, man, it really hasn't been much of an issue for us at all.
Disappointing to know that even being 5'11" with like a 22-inch vertical leap, that I would have been off the board right away. But not for everybody. Really quick, another question about recruiting. And again, you're a busy man. You're running your organization. There's this perception, and I don't like seeing stuff like this, but this is the nature of it, is that, well, BYU's having success like they've never had before, and it must be NIL related. And by the way, coach, I know you're sort of new to college basketball. I've been covering this for 15 years. The second anyone has any level of success, everybody's just pointing fingers and trying to figure out why. What would you say to a fan of another team or a media member or whatever that assumes that you guys are only having recruiting success because of NIL, with respect, of course, to all the boosters that, of course, are supporting your program?
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's a three things have happened at simultaneously, in my opinion, that's allowed us to kind of just even get in the door with a lot of players. Number one, the Big 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge draw for me. You're coming in, it's the best conference in college basketball. You're playing against the best college players every night. You're coaching against the best coaches. That was a major draw for me. So, and I think that's the same for the players. That's number one. Okay, I don't think we can overlook that. Number two is my background. I think that the NBA model that we kind of already addressed, that's something that I think separates us from a lot of schools in the country. Again, it's not hypothetical. There's a proof of concept. I think that's real, and I think people are drawn to that. And then the third thing is the NIL piece is what we've, and when I say we, our collective has been able to do is they've just been able to help us be competitive with the other schools in the country.
Sure.
So there isn't a deficit from other schools in the country to BYU. We're on the same playing field, and I give our guys credit for that. That's basically what has happened. It's been like a three-headed monster right now. If you forecast it, hopefully you go to the proof of concept. Hopefully we can get some of these kids drafted as lottery picks and higher. Okay, then there's another feather in our cap. We haven't played a game. We haven't won a basketball game. So you talk about success, like there really hasn't been any success because we haven't won a game yet, right? And so once we prove that we can do that, then I think we'll hopefully that gives us even more momentum and so forth. But to me, it's been those three things, right? I think we're a little bit more on a level playing field, with a lot of these other schools in the country, and then those other things I hit as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, this is the world that we live in. Everybody, listen, everybody competing at the highest level has resources. It bothers me probably more than it bothers you that anytime anybody has success, people point certain fingers. Really quickly, let's talk just a little bit about this team. We've talked a little bit about some of the younger guys, and I do want to pick your brain on them. I think one thing that's been understated, in my opinion, you guys actually return a lot of players, or about 4 or 5 players that played significant roles on that NCAA tournament team from a year ago. Everybody talks about the 5 stars and the this and the that. But listen, college basketball has been a sport that has been dominated by teams that are older, that have some level of continuity. Not necessarily just the older guys, but I think that's something that's getting a little bit lost in your 2024, 2025 team.
I mean, honestly, that surprised me when I came into this thing. Obviously, we were at the time we're recruiting the portal, at that point, and I was surprised at how much a lot of the recruits and so forth were asking about the makeup of who was on the team and who's coming back, right? And so being able to say, hey, Dallin Hall, who was one of the best point guards in the Big 12 and, shoots 37% from three, he's coming back. Richie Saunders, similar type stats, similar type of experience. He's coming back. Trevin Nell shoots 40 from three, older guy, he's coming back, right? Foose, leading scorer, he battle tested, he's coming back, right? And so being able to have those guys as part of our pitch in terms of like, hey man, you're not walking into like a rebuild, so to speak. You're walking into, you're going to have some high level guys that have experienced and have done it. That helped us, I think, make this place even more attractive to some of the recruits. And then for me as a coach, and this is what I told these guys as I was even trying to get those guys to come back, right? When I first took the job, is like, hey man, I'm going to lean on you guys. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing, right? You guys have done this. You guys have had success. You kind of overachieved in a real positive way last year. And so, I'm leaning on you guys. And so for me, it's been a luxury on multiple fronts.
How about the young guys? I mean, Yegor Demon, I mentioned, the highest rated recruit in BYU history, since the recruiting services kind of became a thing the last 10, 15 years. No, you've only had him on campus for a few weeks, but what are the early impressions of him?
I mean, the thing that stands out so far, just everybody that interacts with him just talks about how good of a guy he is. He's a sponge. He soaks everything up. He's extremely coachable. And by the way, he's about 6'8", 6'9", handles the heck out of it and has an unbelievable feel for the game, right? So it's a unique combination. He's a guy that, other guys want to play with because he gets guys shots. He knows how to play. He's just unique, and I think you look at kind of where the NBA is going right now. It's, big wings that are multifaceted guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot, which he can. We've already had NBA people. Just the other day, we had 2 scouts in here watching workouts, and that was kind of the first thing they said. Wow, I mean, this kid's got unbelievable size, unbelievable feel. But I think I like about him is, like I said, extremely coachable. Comes from a great family. Got a great head on his shoulders, and he's just been really fun to work with so far.
Couple more, we'll get you out of here. Just big picture, you mentioned the privilege of coaching in the Big 12, but you're also on a night in, night out basis going up against some of the best teams, programs, coaches in America. How excited are you? Have you had a chance yet to really kind of dive into who has what or whatever, or is that more of a October, November kind of deal?
Yeah, not as much. I mean, we're getting into a little bit of not just who has what, but how teams play stylistically and so forth. We've been pretty focused on our tasks at hand relative to the recruiting and putting in our system and so forth this summer. But we know what we're up against. We know how talented the league is. But again, like as a competitor, I mean that's something that we've embraced, and we're really looking forward to competing against the best.
Last one for you. We'll let you go on a little bit of a lighter note. You came from the Phoenix Suns. Olympic basketball is going on right now. I mean, I got to ask, I had Rick Barnes on this show about 3 or so years ago, said Kevin Durant is not only the most talented player he ever coached, but the hardest worker, said every practice rep is like, game 7 of the NBA finals. You got any good KD stories to share with America?
Oh
Go-
man, just honestly, I don't know if I say a specific story, but the
Sure.
thing that, I've been lucky in my career. I've coached a lot of really good players like Joel Embiid, guy's been MVP of the league, multiple All-Stars. I mean, I could go down the list, the laundry list of guys I've coached. When we made the trade for Kevin and he showed up, he was just kind of on a different sort of level of stardom than I had experienced, and just seeing the grace that he carries himself with, you know, his interactions with fans, young fans especially, just embracing kind of the who he is, right? Like,
Mhm.
but still have a humility about him and wanting to play the right way. Um, Working extremely hard. Like it was really eye-opening to me when I compared him, to other really good players that I had coached. I just felt like he was kind of on just like another level with it. And you know, I think the funniest story, honestly, is the year prior. He wasn't there. Chris was there, Paul. And so, it felt like every other game, Chris was like passing like Oscar Robinson on like an all-time. And I'm like, how am I even in the locker room with this guy? This is
Yeah.
incredible. And then Kev shows up and it's like he's passing, Larry Bird for some like all-time record. He just became USA's all-time
Mhm.
scorer. That was like an everyday occurrence, being around that guy. So just super grateful, honestly, just to have the experience to work with him and guys like him, and just really cool. I'll be able to tell my grandkids like, hey man, I coached one of the all time greats. So I was really fortunate from that standpoint.
Awesome. Kevin Young, head coach, BYU. It's honestly a pleasure, man. Like I said, I've been watching. It's a pleasure to speak with you. As I told you, if you can get Brett Yormark on the phone, get that Big 12 schedule released. I need to start booking some trips to the Marriott Center. But fired up to watch your team, fired up to kind of follow your guys' journey, and hope to see it in person here in a couple weeks. Thank you, or a couple months, I should say. Thank you for the time, Coach.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.